Foreign Minister Penny Wong couldn't commit to enforcing the warrants, but didn't rule it out either, saying, "We have been clear that all parties to the conflict must comply with international humanitarian law. Australia respects the independence of the ICC and its important role in upholding international law." Let's now bring in National Senate Leader Bridget McKenzie. Bridget, great to see you. What has been your reaction to all of this? And I agree with her wholeheartedly in the first bit. Of course, everyone must comply with international law, absolutely, every day of the week. But can we really respect the independence of the ICC?
It doesn't seem very independent, does it, Erin, when it's targeting a democratically elected leader in the Prime Minister of Israel, who's simply trying to protect his country from terrorists. That's actually what he's trying to do. He's trying to minimise the loss of civilian life, but that's why we all work so very hard to make sure we don't start wars, because it is the civilian casualties that where the greatest toll is. It's never the uniformed combatants which end up making the biggest toll. And there has been a significant loss of life. And like Qatar, like the US, to get to a ceasefire in Gaza, Hamas needs to release the hostages and needs to surrender the terrorist structure. And then a pathway to peace and security in that region can begin to be built. That is the reality. So, I think a lot of people are very troubled by not just the Foreign Minister's response, but another Cabinet Minister, Minister Husic, who, again, are giving tacit signals into, shall we say, Western Sydney communities on the eve of an election, instead of doing what's right, standing with our allies and standing with the US.
In another blow to the Israeli-Australian relationship, former Israeli government minister Ayelet Shaked has been refused a visa here on character grounds. Now, apparently, Home Affairs told her she was refused because she could vilify Australians or incite discord. She was literally here in February last year. Bridget, what do you say?
I think it's incredible. Again, you've got another situation where the federal government is sending domestic signals, domestic political signals into certain communities here at home and making us the laughingstock overseas, shredding our bipartisan approach to Israel and matters in the Middle East that have been upheld for many, many, many decades. You're right, this is a former Defence Minister of an ally who was here only a matter of months ago, and somehow now it's about vilifying and inciting violence. I mean, anyone who has witnessed the atrocities on the streets of Sydney in the last 24 hours would beg the question, how can it get much worse? And I think it's more about sending, as I said, a domestic signal here for political reasons than actually having an open debate. She was to attend a strategic dialogue around, for our Israeli community here, our Israel Jewish community here in Australia, and she comes with a lot of expertise.
Yeah.
I think there are a lot of questions to answer, and Minister Burke needs to be upfront about why he wouldn't let her in.
Senator, I mentioned earlier when we were talking about Albanese and Xi, the fact that the Trump administration will be looking very closely at who they can trust on the world stage, who they can't. And they have been just a couple of weeks into winning an election, so fierce in their support of Israel, yet they would be looking across to us and seeing us almost going backwards in the opposite direction. Is this going to damage a potential relationship between the two?
Well, I hope not, Erin. They're our most powerful and important ally. It is a deep and lasting friendship that lasts long beyond ambassadors, long beyond presidents and prime ministers. But we have always stood on the same side as the US on these sorts of questions. But under Anthony Albanese on the floor of the UN, time and time again, and last week was but another example of our foreign minister choosing to side against the US and against our bipartisan position. I hope it doesn't impact our relationship with the US, but I think I reflect on some of the comments you made earlier. We are in a very, very difficult period right now globally, and there's an old saying for conservatives that the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good men, and in the 21st century women as well, to do nothing. And so it is important for countries like Australia to stand up and be counted in these difficult times, and for us as individuals, particularly people like yourself and I who hold positions of influence, to also stand up, speak out, and make sure the silent majority makes their voice heard. So these extreme views that I believe are being, brought forward by the Albanese government on the global stage and reflected can actually be brought back into a more normalised perspective than what's currently being offered to the global stage, because I think the US will be concerned given the flip that seems to have occurred within the Australian government.
Senator, my beautiful dad, your former colleague, used to say that all the time, plus the standard you walk past is the standard you accept, etc., etc. So well done. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.